All right, I am going to call the Capital Planning Committee meeting to order for Monday, April 4th, 7:30 PM. All members are present. We will start with approval of meeting minutes from the February 28th, 2022 meeting. So Tony drafted them. Did anyone have any comments?
Anyone doesn't have any, I can add a couple.
Good.
Couple points on here. So in the top section, I'm not sure if Mark or Brian were there. I think Mark was, but just to note the ex officio members that were present.
I did not think Mark was there, actually.
Maybe he wasn't. I'm sorry.
What was the date of the meeting?
It's
February
for-
28th.
It's possible. I haven't missed very many, but yeah, that's possible.
Okay.
We can verify that because we'll be able to go, but we can just go back and look. But
Yeah, I mean, I watched the video again this morning, so I don't
Oh,
remember.
then okay. Okay.
Okay.
Then that's fine. That's fine. And then just in general, I guess when a vote's taken, just to include who made the motion and who seconded, was one of my biggest comments, Tony.
Okay.
And then there's a couple of instances of references to CPC in the document. That's a different committee. So whether we define ourselves as capital improvement committee or whatever we're going to be called, or just call us the committee or define it, so there's no confusion. Let's see.
Okay.
so Jeff, I think on that one, he has it defined, but I do agree with
Oh,
you.
he
we should
does?
not call ourselves. It's defined up top.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. I apologize.
But to Jeff's point, I do agree. We should find a acronym other than CPC to define in the minutes, just to be clear.
It would, I like personally brief minutes, but it would be good to have an acronym that we all agreed to.
Once we get through town meeting, assuming the bylaw passes and then the Attorney General approves it, we will be CIPC. But for now, we have to either be cap planning or we just can't be CPC.
I will
Someone beat us?
remove CPC for now.
Okay. Someone beat us by like 15 years to that acronym.
Okay.
Can we just put cap there? I mean, would that make sense?
Or committee.
Committee, yeah.
Okay.
I just have, I think, more. So on page 2, section 7, my last name, Hawk versus Hark. There's
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
Boston reading of that. And then
Sorry.
I thought you were trying to go superhero with Jeff there. I liked it.
I only play one on TV. Let's see. And then in terms of, you had questions you wanted to discuss, Tony, but the document reference, the only other thing I would add is Jim Haggerty, the town clerk, submitted in advance of the meeting I think a 2-pager on his capital request for the clicker devices. So that's my only other comment.
All right. Does anyone else have comments?
I just had one other than what's been mentioned, which was down in section 10, where it says there have been no further comments from other town boards, so bylaw changes will be adopted. And I was thinking maybe forwarded to town meeting, because doesn't that have to be voted on?
So it was not at all clear to me what the next step
Yeah.
was on
No,
the
that's-
bylaws.
Yeah, no,
That's
we've
what it
been,
is.
yeah, we went through this at last town meeting. That's the only reason I caught it. So
Yeah,
caught it
and
at that moment.
I put that in my note. Yeah.
The right way to phrase it is that the wording that we currently have will be printed in the warrant for consideration by town meeting.
So proposed bylaw wording will be, say that again, please.
Printed in the warrant for consideration by annual town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Did you do anything else, Joe?
No, I'm good.
I agree with the comments that have been mentioned to date. I have one other item under the school research subcommittee update. The final recommendation was beyond forming a Neary School Building Committee. I think it also needs to talk about the consolidation of 4 schools to 3 schools, because that was a major component of the recommendation as well.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or edits? All right, I'll move that we accept the minutes with the edits discussed in this meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Park,
All right, aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Shoner,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that is unanimous 6-0. I'm going to, just because I see him sitting out there and I think it's a quick item, I'm going to bring in Acting Chief Newell, and we're going to go to item 4 on our agenda related to Police Department taser renewal. Mark, are you going to present this? Do you want me to give any color, or are we going to ask the Acting Chief?
So I had promised the acting chief that I would give the broad brush, and then if there's any questions or anything in that, he can feel free to help cover up my blemishes.
Okay, go ahead.
So if the committee remembers, we had talked a little bit about tasers, and we talked about looking at a consolidated packaging of tasers, body cameras, and any cameras that are needed for the cruisers. And I believe the chief had put a kind of an omnibus package number of what was it, $600,000, Jason? I believe.
Yeah, north of that. Yep.
Something north of $600,000. So it was a pretty significant investment. Obviously, we need to better understand the cruiser cams, because normally when a new cruiser is purchased, you outfit it with all the new things that you need, including a new camera. And the body cams obviously is something that we need to get approval from the union in order to do that. And we're currently in negotiations at the table. That's one of the things we are discussing. So in the interim, the chief had talked about a bridge for the tasers in order to get through fiscal 23 to fiscal 24, when we will have everything better lined up. We have 2 groups of tasers. We have one group that is coming due for replacement this coming year, July 1st, fiscal 23. We have the others, another set, smaller group that is due in fiscal 26. So we'd still have 3 years of payments left on those. The company credited us for the 3 years, consolidated things in, did a new contract for all new units for fiscal 23. And it was going to be a payment of $10,603 for fiscal 23. And the chief had told this committee, and also told the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, I'm still getting used to that, told the Select Board that they would not be putting that in the budget this year, that he would be taking that $10,603 either out of forfeiture money or Harvard funds, but you would not see it in the budget process. The other part of the story is that in order to do this, we were signing up for another 5-year contract with the tasers, with the company. So the first payment for fiscal 23 is the $10,603, but years 2, 3, 4, and 5 are going to be approximately $19,000 a year. Now, this is similar to what we've done with all of our anytime we've done a contract for tasers, it's been 5 years. 5 years is about the lifespan when you purchase the units, through the company. You also buy the maintenance. So if something happens, acting Chief Newell has an issue with one of the units, They fix it or they replace it. And it's very nice. It's very seamless. We don't have to worry too much about that. We don't need a third company provider. But in order to, in the discussion of the bridge that the chief had talked about with the committee, this contract can be rolled into a larger contract for cruiser cams, for body cams. As the chief had discussed, it's just the contract that we are getting now is a 5-year deal, but we can change that, if we, assuming that we want to do something as the chief had outlined previously for the larger package for all of the camera items. So essentially just wanted to make the committee aware that as we sit here today, there's a $10,600 payment that's going to be made on the contract. I believe that Chair Malinowski is going to be updating his capital sheet to show these $19,000 payments going out for the next 4 years, 2024 and on. And then obviously we will revisit that when assumably we have the approval for the body cams and looking at the cruiser cams, what needs to be replaced as well. So it's a placeholder, but I wanted you to understand when you see these payments that'll be in the new capital plan going out a number of years, this is why it is.
And Mark, maybe one thing I'll just add, because when you called me to ask how capital views this, and we said we agreed to add it to the agenda, the one thing that was pretty compelling to me that I asked you is if town meeting in a future period were to not fund $19,000, what happens? In my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, is if that were to happen and the money wasn't found elsewhere, the chief would pack up all the tasers, put them in a box and send them back to the manufacturer. So basically, while it is a 5-year contract, really the way I'm viewing it in a non-legal sense is really we're just locking into a price for 5 years.
Correct.
With the ability to option up or down based on the needs of the department in the town. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, it is subject to appropriation. So in any given year, if the appropriation doesn't come through for whatever reason, then, the department would basically package them all up, send them all back. And, we have no tasers, but we also have no liability.
Okay. Are there any questions by the committee? Go ahead, Joe.
How many companies do this rental?
Yeah, I can do the easy questions, but I think I'm probably gonna have to throw this one to the acting chief and see if he's got a better answer. Now, the answer may be I'll have to get back to you on that, but let's give it a shot because I know I don't have it.
I believe there's only one right now, and it's Axon.
Okay, so no matter what we do, we're sort of locked into the only player in town.
Yeah, I believe that's the case, and but I can also get back on that info if that isn't the case.
Okay, so there's nobody else that we can contract in Massachusetts, is what you're telling me. So we're sort of over a barrel.
Sorry, my thing glitched out. Can you guys hear me?
That's
Yes.
a little better.
Okay. Yeah, so I believe that it's just that Axon is the company that's doing the bundle there.
Does that answer your question, Joe?
That kind of killed the rest of my questions.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
So to maybe add on to Jason's compelling part that he mentioned. So it seems like you mentioned it's a 5-year almost price lock-in, no commitment whatsoever. Is it possible to go beyond 5 years and lock it in for longer in terms of opting in to get the benefit of today's prices over more than a 5-year period? Because there's really no risk, I would say, to
I mean, my understanding is the lifespan of the units is about 5 years. So you're going to lock you into the price for these units because that's kind of what they cost now and what they think the maintenance and everything is going to be. But then obviously you're going to see a reset in 5 years with the newer models, the newer units, whatever they may cost at that point. So I'm not sure it'd be advantageous for the company to go beyond 5 years, or whether, they'd be willing to do that, because the units we have in 5 years aren't going to be worth anything.
Right, but in terms of just evergreen type of arrangement, that's
Yep.
not a possibility, is what you're saying. It's just only with the useful life of the tasers.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I'm not aware that there's anything that they're doing beyond 5 years.
Thank you.
Karen?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. My first one tags on to Jeff's, and my question is, what is the real useful life of the taser? And is it possible to, have a service contract for the existing tasers for years 6, 7, and 8 instead of buying new ones?
That I'm not sure. I mean, obviously you would be, my understanding is that, the company, does a 5-year contract, provides the maintenance, the replacement and everything. Is there a third party? I don't know what the useful life is beyond what happens after 5 years. We've been very fortunate. We've never had to find out. But is there a separate company that, a third party vendor that is willing to provide a maintenance contract for these units? I don't know. So after 5 years, we own them, but we're going to just do simply a maintenance agreement for another 2 or 3 years. I mean, that would, I'd have to defer. I'd have to defer to the chief on that one, simply because I don't know what happens to the units after 5 years, the degradation of performance and everything. And again, these things don't get used very often. I mean, I think, the acting chief can tell you how often they get drawn, and I don't know that he's going to have to use 2 hands. It's very infrequent. So making sure that they're in, good working order and everything in that, I think is paramount, but I would defer to him.
Maybe just to help with answering the question, remind us how old the units that are going to be replaced are right now.
The units that are being replaced now are 5 years, are 5 years old. The majority of the units, there's a smaller group that they still have 2 to 3 years of life on them.
And that was the trade-in that you're referring to.
And that was the trade-in in order to, basically now get them all stepping off on the same foot so that they're all renewing and expiring at the same time.
Does that answer your question, Aaron? Or
Yeah, well, I guess so. Boy, this Axon company really seems like they've cracked the market. They don't have any competitors, and they could do anything they want. But it is what it is. My second question, and I don't know if this matters, the funding source that you mentioned for FY23, Harvard and something else, is it possible to have the payments in the subsequent 4 years from those funding sources, so that it wasn't coming out of the general fund, or doesn't that even matter?
I mean, I think that's a policy discussion. The town receives, probably about, I'd have to think, I think it's about $24,000, maybe $25,000 a year from Harvard University, basically for the services that we provide at their campus in town. I mean, at this point, it's pretty much just the repository. They've gotten rid of most everything else up there. They don't have the labs, they don't have so the services we provide are very limited, and but they still do pay that amount. That amount is designated to police and fire, so it is split evenly, and those funds have been primarily used to supplement things that go beyond the budgetary items, some minor equipment replacement that may happen, training that they do. things of that nature. So it really has not been, it supplements what is done in the budget. So could it be used? Sure. The chief had agreed to use it for this year to create a bridge. So there is a possibility that, something could be done in the future, but there is no commitment at this point.
Okay, I see. So it's more used for random things that come up rather than a planned expense into the future. Okay.
Correct.
So that wouldn't really make sense. Thank you.
Go to Tony.
Yes, maybe you said this and I just missed it. So how many tasers do we have?
I'll defer that question to at least on my screen, the bottom square.
We have about 24 tasers.
Thank you.
Joe?
Just to be clear, all 24 tasers will be covered under the contract that you're stating, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Are there any more questions for the town administrator or the acting chief? All right, so I think it would be appropriate to take a motion and a vote on this particular item. And I'll try to craft the motion, just so we have it documented for the record, I'll move that the capital planning committee split the current taser body camera line item on the capital plan that's scheduled to start in FY23 to reflect the conversation that's occurred here tonight, to show an expense coming out of the Harvard Fund for the current payment that is due, and to separate the tasers and body cameras, with the tasers indicating the $19,000 amount discussed tonight, and the body camera to be discussed at a future point in time when the town is ready to further discuss that item. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All right, we need a roll call on that. Brascio,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Palmer, Shoner,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. That's unanimous. Thanks. Appreciate you coming, Chief.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks, Chief.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
All
You
right,
too. Thank you.
I'm going to go back to chair and members updates. First one is pretty easy. Neary building committee update. The committee met for the first time last week. They are meeting again a week from tonight. Committee was organized and got, in particular, our residents that hadn't been following the process up to speed. It's a far-reaching committee given the membership charge, especially with the number of ex officios on the screen at any one time. That was, there was actually at one point more ex officios than voting members on the meeting. So all in all, it was a good first meeting. The main purpose of the next meeting is really to discuss the $950,000 feasibility study that's on the annual town meeting warrant. Just make sure everyone understands how that number came to be. And we also have an agenda item later in our meeting to discuss that. But my recommendation on that is going to be that I'll share the presentation from that meeting. I'm hoping that John Lemieux from Vertex can also attend that meeting to articulate how we came up with that number and how it got into the place or warrant article. And then obviously capital should take a position before town meeting. Our positions don't go in the warrant, so we have time to do that if we're so inclined. So that's the Neary Building Committee update. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Next item is Shop C South Union Subcommittee. Joe.
The committee's finally going to get going again this week. We're going to meet on Wednesday, if all goes correctly, at which point it is expected that an outline will be submitted by the chair to start filling in a report for the select board.
Do you think you're gonna wrap up this year, or you think it will go into the next?
No,
fiscal
it's going to
year?
wrap up pretty quick. There,
Okay.
as far as feasibility goes, we've had enough conversations with people to know that sure, that the property is feasible for affordable housing. The question is, what plan would go forward? What's the town's appetite for units and what kind? From here, it's really a matter of decisions being made at a level above this committee. But the feasibility is there. The property is perfectly adequate to do a whole bunch of options.
So the report will go to the select board and then they'll take it from there and decide next steps is the intention.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions for Joe? All right, next one is town clerk revision to dollar amount of prior request. So as everyone remembers, Jim came to our last meeting. We voted to support his $18,000 item for the clickers for town meeting going on the capital plan. Obviously, his intended source is ARPA, but there's obviously no guarantees of that. But he thought it was important to have on the capital plan, regardless of the future funding source. He came back to myself and Andrew Hamilton, who's the chair of the ARPA committee, and requested to modify the amount to $18,600, mainly because the option that he had originally priced out had only had 3 buttons, and there's an optionality to actually go to 2 buttons, yes or no. And he thought that was important. I don't know why 3 buttons cost less than 2 buttons, but anyways, this is the proven process that Mr. Hegarty recommends that we take. I didn't feel like it was enough of an amount to have Mr. Hegarty come back. So I have added to my chair's report. If anyone has any questions or wants him to come back before adjusting that amount, I'm more than happy to, but he's busy enough at this time of the year. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that?
What was the original amount? I'm sorry.
It went from 18,000 to 18,600. So it was a $1 increase per clicker. And as he had mentioned before, there were 600 clickers.
Yeah, I think we ought to drill down pretty deep on this one, Jason.
All right. I thank Jim for his thoroughness and completeness. And I will assume that those comments mean we're moving forward from this item. Next is the review of the recreation pickleball request for the Finn Mooney complex for consideration at the 2022 annual town meeting as a CPA article. So my understanding is the Community Preservation Committee has already voted on this, the real CPC, and they're planning, because they do have the authority to put it in the warrant, so it is in the warrant. The full form has now been submitted by Tim in the Recreation Commission. That was circulated to the committee in advance of the meeting. So our action here is really to discuss if we have any objections to it. Otherwise, we need to take a motion and position on the item to be complete with all the other capital items that we've voted on before this. Go ahead, Lisa.
So Jason, do we know where the any level of oversight on this project will lie? Are they bringing in a project manager? I mean, I know it's a small amount, but irregardless, small amounts sometimes create the largest problems.
So I have 3 answers to your question. One is CPA will do whatever they normally do, right?
Okay.
And I think that's obviously a step that most projects don't normally have in this town. 2, the application itself speaks to Mr. Davis overseeing it from the Recreation Department, and it speaks to some of his credentials. I think that was in the actual CPA application that's behind the capital request.
Okay.
And then
I missed it.
3, I think capital planning in general, based on our current charge and or the revised bylaw, if it gets passed in its current form at town meeting, does have an option to have a seat at the table in that, even though there would already be, we ran into this last year too, right? Is CPA has to oversee it because it's their funds, but do we offer assistance in any way, shape, or form? So
Okay,
it's really
thank you.
the answer to a $60,000 item.
Yeah, no, I missed where it said on the last page that Tim is the acting project manager. Okay, thank you.
Karen?
So this might be irrelevant to our discussion and decision tonight, but and maybe I should take this up with Tim, but you know, they refinished the Neary tennis courts quite a few years ago, and the surface is really bad. And I'm wondering if they're planning to use, if they know that, if they're planning to use the same process. Is that something I would ask Tim about?
I think so.
Okay. I'll do that. Thank you.
And Karen, I'll go a step further. I'm not sure if the surface should or shouldn't be the same, given like how they're configuring it for pickleball. I would assume they have the right expertise to be deciding that.
Yeah, I mean, the Neary courts are configured for pickleball as well, or at least one of the courts is. But I don't know, the finish on it is strange so that the ball doesn't bounce correctly. I don't know if any of you are tennis players. There's a problem. I'll bring it up with Tim.
It's a good question. I'm just not the tennis player in the household.
Yeah.
Any other Lisa?
Sorry, just one more question. Do we know, Jason, I didn't see it unless I missed it. In the packet, what contingency did they build in? What percent?
I do not see that.
All right. I mean, I can certainly reach out and I can ask the question. I just wasn't sure if you were aware if there was any contingency built in.
I think there's a 10.
Hang on, it is 5,500, almost, yeah, 5,500 is the last item in the chart.
Oh my God, right in front of my face once again. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
And just for everyone's benefit, because that's a really good question, Lisa. CPA actually requires projects to have contingencies on them. It's one of the things they go through when they go through the process. So.
All right, thank you. I'm 0 for 2, so I'm just going to stop now for the rest of the night.
No, they're still good questions. All right, so Karen, you're going to take your question offline to Tim. Are you comfortable taking a vote, though? Okay. All right. Then I will move that we support the recreation CPA article for the Mooney Finn pickleball / tennis court project for the 2022 annual town meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Karen. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Shoner,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that is unanimous. Karen, if you want to just have Tim send an email, just so we all have the answer to that, I think that would be probably good to get it in writing, given it was discussed in our meeting.
Sure, I'll do that.
Next item is 2022 annual town meeting warrant, update on final warrant language, including adjustments, removals related to capital items. So I believe everyone's on Mark's mailing list that he sent out, I believe it was last Friday, Mark, if I've got my dates correct. The latest warrant, is that the warrant that's going to the select board tomorrow night for signature?
I went away on vacation and the board changed everything. So it's going to the board tomorrow night. The language is pretty much as close to final as possible for your purposes. It is final for the capital pieces. There's still some pieces that are being tweaked. Select board actually put in a special meeting on April 12th to finalize the warrant, and it'll go to the printer the next day. So there's an extra week of play, but for your purposes, Mr. Chair, the language is final.
Okay, so I just want to highlight a few things to the committee and then I'll open it to questions. All the capital project descriptions are in there. As you know, we met with the select board and they have asked for capital to be involved with roads for the next year until we can figure out Public Works Planning Board, who according to town code definitely has a lot of responsibilities related to Department of Public Works, but has not met in a decent amount of time. So road maintenance will fall within capital, at least for the next fiscal year, subject to reevaluation next year. That wording's all in the warrant. for that particular warrant article item. The main item to draw your attention to is the regional school water heater has been removed. That is at the request of the chair, the regional school committee, and the superintendent. Candidly have gotten 3 different answers to why. But the answer I have in writing from the superintendent is that the price changed dramatically at the last minute, and they weren't even confident they were going to be able to lock in at that price. And they thought it was going to be too late to go back to the towns to seek additional funding. So they have pulled it and will be revisiting it in the next fiscal year. I do not know whether this would be something they would ask for consideration on in the fall, or whether they'll wait another year till the annual. While I understand why they did that, I think it's a tough environment. I think everyone's working in right now from a pricing perspective, but I think we all had a general sense of a significant amount of deferred maintenance on that building in general, and it's only going to compound things. And this was actually, well, not a perfect year ever for a capital item. It fit a lot better from a Southborough perspective in this year. I can't really speak to how it fit from a Northborough perspective. So that has been removed. So I guess specific to that, are there any questions on that? Go ahead. Jeff, your hand's not up for this, correct?
Well, no, I guess in general, I don't think I was on that email, so I haven't seen that. I didn't get anything from Mark from you. When was that sent?
Friday, Mark sent it out to all boards and committees.
Jeff, I'll forward that to you right now.
Okay.
Mark,
Thank
why
you.
don't you just forward it to the whole capital mailing list, just
Sure.
for the sake of completeness while we keep talking.
Thank you.
Joe, is your question specific to the regional water heater?
Yeah, I'm not sure I saw that email either. That was that for the backup one that we were doing sort of ahead of time?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks. That's all.
They called it redundant. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
So any other questions on the 2022 ATM warrant? Okay, Mark will make sure you have the latest version of that. And obviously don't hesitate to reach out to him if you have any questions as you work through it. Sounds like we have another week until it actually goes to a printer. Next is update on advisory meeting from March 30th, 2022. So we did not have a quorum for this meeting, but I did see Karen and Jeff were there. The main topic of discussion, while they did not take a vote, there was no reaction that would indicate that anyone was going to vote against any particular capital item that's on the warrant. We did spend some time speaking directly about the regional capital stabilization article. In fairness to them, they were not aware that the superintendent had made some tweaks based on his So basically, the week prior to us being there, the superintendent and his team did the same presentation he did for us about 2 months ago. Advisory had some feedback to kind of ring fence it, to not let it get to be a large amount. The superintendent actually took that feedback and incorporated it into the warrant article language. But when we were speaking to advisory, it became abundantly clear about halfway through the conversation that they weren't working with the latest language. So they've now had a chance to see the latest language. It was changing some members' reaction on the fly. They did not commit, and I don't blame them for not committing. They wanted some time to digest it. So I think that will continue to be a topic of discussion, probably leading right up to annual town meeting. I don't know, Mark, I know Mr. Pfaff was going to reach out to you specifically for council's opinion on how the wording was listed in terms of specifically related to the 600,000. Has that happened yet?
He did reach out to me. I did pass that along to council, and I just sent something over to council just to poke him about that, because I've not heard anything definitive back from him yet on that.
Okay. So I think if you could just make sure capital sees that reply too. We don't know what advice, I think unless this is an article sponsored by the region, correct, Mark?
Correct.
So that language will not change unless Greg or the regional school committee chair come to you before next Tuesday, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So what we may need to be prepared to do is advisory, depending upon the reaction to town council's advice or interpretation of the wording, may propose an amendment on town meeting floor to lower the $600,000 threshold as currently worded. But remember, we're not funding it this year. We're just allowing for it to be set up and funded at a future date if the region was so inclined. I don't know, Karen or Jeff, if you have anything to add from that discussion. It was kind of bouncing all around on that particular topic in general.
Yeah, that was definitely the biggest point of discussion. You're right, Jason. But in terms of maybe it's procedural and it's not relevant right now, but how that would work in terms of changing the threshold, and because it's both towns, right? So I don't know how that would work.
Well, Northborough adopted this a few years ago. So I don't know if I don't know that they're going to go back to Northborough, so they'd be bound by the stricter language that Southborough would then have.
Okay.
And I'm not sure whether or not it's simply that the article, the binding part of the article, is the acceptance of the Mass General Law to allow them to do the stabilization fund. And then anything else would likely be policy decisions of the school committee. The school committee would need to develop a policy. That's one of the things I'm waiting for some confirmation from council on, because again, as was just noted, this was passed in Northborough in 2019, and it had very limited language, simply basically accepting the Mass General Law.
But the language is currently written actually requires presentations to the Northborough and Southborough capital committees.
It
Northborough
does.
calls themselves something different. I can't ever remember the acronym. It's nowhere close to capital.
Right.
So they'd actually be bound to do something for Northborough that never was in a Northborough warrant, based on the Southborough warrant, if I'm reading this correctly.
And that's why I'm trying to find out is that, is the only binding factor of both articles simply the acceptance of the Mass General Law, and then any additional things that are agreed to would have to be put into a policy the school committee would need to accept.
Yeah. Any other questions on that item? Okay. The only other thing that was briefly mentioned, and I wouldn't be surprised if advisory wants to speak one more time about it, is there is a citizens petition article directly related to oversight of road maintenance. And I think it's a little broader than road maintenance. It also related to DPW operations. It basically required a bunch of things of advisory. The clear message from advisory was they really are not interested and don't view it as their role as advisory. I do foresee, based on the conversation at that meeting, as well as some calls that Ms. Cook has made to me, as well as the proponent of the article, Ms. Patty Burns Fiore, is there may be a discussion that involves capital. I don't know. I didn't offer an opinion on that, but that is something that may come about through an amendment on town meeting floor. It could also move to other boards or committees too. It seemed that advisory, though, was pretty set that they didn't view it as their responsibility and didn't think that they were properly situated to accomplish what the citizens petition was doing. So there's nothing else we can discuss tonight until we know kind of what direction that's going to go and then take a view. Any other questions on that? All right, ARPA committee. Joe and Tony, I know you've been meeting a lot. I didn't feel like this fell under members report. I felt like there's probably going to be a lot of back and forth on this. So really give you both the floor, just update us on where you're at, where you're going. And I'd like to keep the discussion primarily focused on impact to our capital plan moving forward. And the main reason for that is at the end of our advisory meeting, advisory was very focused, once they get through town meeting in early May, to have another meeting with us to really discuss what FY '24 and beyond look like, because they know it's not good. And there's a lot of competing interests to try to get their arms around that. And obviously there is some overlap with probably projects that are in front of you. So I'll give either or both of you the floor to just give us a broad update on where you think you're at, and then we'll kind of go around with any questions.
Joe, do you want to summarize?
Oh, no, I'm looking forward to hearing you do it.
So I think, in my opinion, the ARPA committee is moving right along, meeting weekly. Meeting weekly because there's a tight deadline. I think the committee is working well. It's effective meetings. We're in the process of polling the community for feedback on relative priorities of projects. I think that information will become available to us in the next week or two. We've had some preliminary discussions about how, as a committee, we might prioritize things. More discussion to be held on that still. And many more meetings in front of us from not till May. So, but we're moving along. So, Joe, what would you add?
I would also add this week, a bunch of the members are sending questions about proposals to their submitters to clarify projects and amounts and reasons for amounts that should help the committee make better decisions. We're still in the as Tony said, we're still in the process of really hashing out how we're going to make things, how we're going to view things as important, what sources we're going to use to prioritize that, and the amounts that are actually needed for the projects themselves. We also have a few questions sent out, I believe, to the select board as well, in terms of gauging their interest or appetite in one or two matters that have already been raised at their level.
And I guess I'll just add, as soon as that committee has a need for assistance from this committee, I'm sure the request will be made.
So let me ask a procedural question. Has anyone gone through the list of requests that you're vetting and compared it to the capital plan?
Not
That
that
are
I'm-
capital in nature. I realize there's items that are outside of capital.
I wouldn't say specifically, although for instance, when we recommended money to be set in to potentially reduce the tax rate itself, the recommendation from the ARPA committee itself was for road money. So we were looking into items of a capital nature in terms of trying to offset raises in potential tax rate. And I know that was a little bit of a concern. I remember we had a conversation at one point where you were a little concerned about us alleviating things that might be in the tax rate, and people might be surprised the next year because they would be right back on the budget. But there are some other projects like the senior center that are on there. But under the umbrella, we have so many other concerns in addressing the categories. So there has to be, I think, as Tony alluded to, there has to be a prioritization and amounts set on some of the priorities that are alternate to capital as well.
Completely understand. I guess selfishly, I'm going to make a request that either one of you two, or your chair, or if you, I had asked your chair for a copy of what had been submitted, and I haven't heard anything back in a couple of weeks. If you're going to make a recommendation, the select board in the middle of May with projects, and the projects don't even appear on if there are some that don't appear on the capital plan, which I'm aware of some already, the burden then falls back to the six of us to have to vet those and say, should they be on the capital plan? Because otherwise it puts the select board in a position where they can't even consider, and let's just say your top item is not even on the capital plan, and it should be on the capital plan, it just was missed, and ARPA was the opportunity to fund it. Like, there's no way, like, we'd basically be in conflict with capital policy, because the select board technically would be going against their own policy to accept ARPA's recommendation. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we need to start getting these department heads in if we think there's any merit to what they've submitted to ARPA, so that we can get it on the capital plan. And then that allows you all to do your work in prioritization and say, yep, it's on the capital plan. Here's why it's on the capital plan. Here's when it's slotted for. But obviously, if you're going to dismiss something and it's not even going to get that far, then, I'm less concerned with that. But my guess is I'm sure there's something here that needs to be considered.
I think that's absolutely a correct assessment.
Okay.
We will absolutely keep that in mind, Jason. And and it is certainly the case that the chairperson of the ARPA committee is dealing with a lot of topics right now. So
Yeah,
you shouldn't feel like you're being ignored.
Yeah, no, she's she's taking an awful lot on. There's no question. She's really powering through.
Well,
I don't know if there's any, and maybe somebody on this committee could weigh in. I don't know if there's any conflict of us sending you the list as it stands right now, because we have one.
it should, the public record, you're screen sharing in your meetings, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. It's all public information.
So I can just forward you the last email we got with the list, and it has the last list we got has the questions that we sent out as well. So
I think it'd be just helpful for the 6 of us, right? Minus the 2 of you that are probably very familiar with it, just to get caught up. Obviously, we shouldn't go back and forth on it, but just if we can have that. But I'm looking at our select board chair here as well. Right, if really the intention is that there will be some decisions on this in mid-May, and knowing that Joe and Tony have been meeting weekly on this for weeks now, if not months, and I'm hard pressed to fit a capital planning meeting in there, just knowing that you're at town meeting, ARPA's wrapping up. Like, is that the right timeline? Is I guess what I would challenge you and your board to, like, to actually have, right? Like, you can only ask so much of volunteers. So I'm just, as much as I'm sure everyone wants it to be done, like, I don't know how I fit a capital planning discussion of some of these topics, if any of them rise to the equation, in there, in fairness to just Joe and Tony.
No, Jason, I agree. And I would have hope, I guess, that if the timeline we've given them is just way too tight and there's a lot more work involved than was anticipated, that the chair would reach out to me and I would be happy to bring it to the board and see if we can alter the timeline in any way. Obviously, we want the job to be as vetted and as complete as they can. So I will reach out to Andrea. I'll shoot her an email tonight just to see if she thinks the timeline is unrealistic, and the board can have further discussion on that.
I think realistic or unrealistic really depends upon how firm people are looking at the individual proposals. I mean, some of them are more shovel ready than others, so to speak. And there's certain ones, I think, as you said, there's one specifically from Trails that could have easily shown up on the Capitol, shown up here, but she's applied to ARPA, but she's also applied for state grants to cover it. But she already has matching work. I think she has an agreement for DPW to do $20,000 worth of work, and there's another $40,000 from another source. And there's multiple components where they've negotiated. They're in process of negotiating some perks from some other sources. So, bravo to Trails for trying to get this all done without us. But certainly, and if it's going to fall through ARPA's pit and it's going to fall through on the grants, it's going to show up. It should show up here for the amount that it is and the type of project it is.
And the Trails chair has been in contact with me, but said she's not ready for us.
Okay.
So Tony, you sit on Trails, right? You probably are more familiar with the project. So she's very well aware. She asked exactly what she has to do. She's just not ready. So
her proposal, as far as itemized, looked better than most. It looked like it had been priced out, and so
then she's probably ready, in my humble opinion. Okay. Other questions from the committee related to ARPA? All right. I'll just, on behalf of the rest of us, Joe and
Jason, we'll definitely, bring this sense of the capital committee to the ARPA committee. A lot will transpire over the next 4 weeks right now. So as I think things firm up, I suspect there will definitely be some reviews that this committee needs to perform.
Okay. Keep us posted, and thank you on behalf of all of us for the countless hours you're putting to that. Discussion and potential vote regarding Neary School feasibility town meeting article. I would like to get the presentation from the Neary Building Committee so that you're all making an informed decision, even if if your mind is made up that it doesn't matter what the number is, you would support something like this, or no matter what the number is, you wouldn't support it. I think it's important to see how the number was created, and I just don't have that. So unless anyone objects, I would hold on this agenda item. I will say before moving on, I've had multiple people comment to me about the relative lack of discussion related to this particular warrant article, especially given its size. So it's either so self-explanatory that people are just going to show up and vote for it one way or another, or people aren't aware of it. And I don't know what the answer is. So I would just ask that each of you in each of your channels that you talk about, because I think this is a broad representation of the town sitting on this committee, just gauge, right? And if you feel like there's more education that needs to be out there, that's certainly feedback I can take back to the Neary Building Committee. Lisa's on it as well, as the select board rep, just to make sure that either that committee and or the select board and or the local school committee are just, doing whatever education is needed. It's not the end all be all. It gets funded now, but it sends a significant statement to the MSBA that this town's ready to go. And it allows, stuff to get, be put in motion over the summer, as opposed to having to wait for a future meeting. There is no actions that will be taken over the summer without the vote. And obviously summer is a good time to do a lot of feasibility and testing, when the ground is, not rock solid. Anything else in Neary? All right, Karen and Jeff, over to you for the MTC townwide and ARPA survey.
Karen, you want to go first? MTC?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you're,
I guess I can, I don't really have an update at this point on the ARPA survey. I can connect with, I apologize for his name from MTC, just to see if there's anything else he needs from us, but I know that's still ongoing, the survey. So results are still coming in.
But maybe Jeff, articulate to the committee what you did.
I'm sorry. I thought you were looking for.
We haven't met since then, so I think it's just helpful.
I apologize. I thought you were looking for an update on things. So what I did was I connected with the chair of the MTC. He, in collaboration with Joe and Tony's committee, the ARPA committee, put together a survey on Sobro.org or Espero.org. And the way that the survey is constructed is it's got a list of items that were agreed on by the ARPA committee, and they are structured in such a way that the folks that are answering the survey effectively rate in order of priority what their preferred uses of the ARPA funds would be based on what is listed on the survey. I gave them some feedback. They took that feedback and went back to the ARPA committee with such feedback. But I think what else I'd like to share is I gave them a couple of pointers in terms of just how it should be structured, how there should be some caveats in there, that it's not bonding in nature. And that's really it. So I'm not sure if anyone's been on there, but I think it's laid out pretty well. I like the fact that if you go on there, the order of the of the responses are randomized so that it kind of reduces the bias in terms of how folks are responding to that. So I thought that part was great. So that's all I've really got for you guys.
Yeah, so I spoke to Matt Probst about the town satisfaction survey. And the satisfaction survey is quite lengthy. It's something that the town does. I guess their plan is to do it every year. I believe last year was the first year that they put it out to the town. And so they use pretty much the same questions from last year. And I spoke to and they don't have specific I spoke to they didn't have specific capital items in there. So I did work with Matt, and actually Jason supported this as well, to put in a question about the priority of consideration for upcoming FY24 and forward major capital items. And the other thing I did, I asked Matt if it would be appropriate to include any climate action questions in the survey around the town's interest in pursuing various things. And he thought that that was a good idea. So he did put in 3 questions. I also spoke to the Melissa Danced, Melissa Danced, thank you, from the she's the community preservation conservation agent about the questions, and she thought that it would be important to put a question in there about water treatment and sewer capability. So we did add maybe 2 or 3 questions that related to the town's interest in pursuing more actions around carbon reduction and sustainability.
I just wanted to thank you both. I know they gave you basically no time to turn it around, and I know you both graciously raised your hand at the last meeting. So thanks for getting it out there, and I guess I very much look forward to seeing what comes back.
Me too.
Anything else in the surveys?
Jason, if I could just add to that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Again, I also want to share my thanks to all of you. You know, we've heard a lot tonight of the extra things that you're doing besides being on Capitol, and I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Jason's thanks, but also a thanks from the Board of Selectmen for, you know, everything you've taken on and you continue to do, and, you know, under tight timeframes. So that's it. I just wanted to add an extra thanks.
Lisa, because you said that, now I need to selfishly plug, we are missing a 7th member here. So that falls square in the select board's responsibilities, I think.
Okay, I have my extra job that I need to take care of. Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely push that out again, Jason. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Joe.
And Tony may have heard different, but at our last committee meeting last week, we were expecting sort of the rudimentary beginnings of the results from the survey coming in this week, I believe. So, and it had been, for us, at least I believe we had about 400 responses already from what we were told. And that also was going to be divided a little for the ARPA, because we had sort of, the original survey didn't have trails included. So we sort of going to have a pre-trails and post-trails results being added.
I was gonna say, I do not remember trails being on the survey when I did it.
It got added after, I think there was 300 and something on there that had done it. And then it was discovered because trails came to the meeting and said, I don't think we're in them. So we added them in. So we'll see what happens, and if the results are skewed after they were added, which will be interesting.
Okay. All right. Anything else in surveys? All right. Next item is quick. The ongoing capital project update tracker. So we agreed, I had been listing every item, every meeting. And I think we agreed to come up with a tracker last meeting that would show all of the FY, I guess it would have been the 2021 annual town meeting and the 2021 fall special town meeting, the articles that were appropriated, the funding source, how much has been spent, and the status update from the department head. I spoke to Brian and Carla to get their feedback on the tracker. And we've agreed that we're going to include it now as part of the quarterly financial town update that the select board gets. So the select board will also see it and understand how the capital money is being spent and where the turnbacks are, because there are turnbacks, which is, I think, sometimes lost on people, that just because something got appropriated, it didn't get spent. And then we will talk about it at our specific meeting and probably go a little more granular than my guess the select board will go on some of it. So I thought that was a great suggestion. I can't remember Brian and Carla, which one of them suggested it, but I think I'll give them both credit. And, so we should have that now. We just closed the quarter. So I would expect that will be, we'll be able to flesh it out at our next meeting and, take comments on the feedback for the template moving forward. Any comments, questions on that? All right. Is there any public comment? All right, no public comment. So let's talk meeting schedule. So I'm going to assume, Tony and Joe, that ARPA is not going to need anything from us before town meeting. Obviously, if that changes, you both let us know. But my proposal would be that the full committee not meet again until after town meeting. Is there any objections to that? Okay. So I'm going to propose a date of Monday, May 9th. Is there any objections to that? Okay, we will pencil it in. Obviously, we can revisit it. If there are actions we need to take before town meeting, I will schedule something for a quick meeting. I want to see how the Neary thing plays out. Obviously, our two ARPA reps, you know where to find me. And, I'm sure there's something else I'm not thinking about, or something else that will come about, like the police taser thing we dealt with in the first part of the meeting. There any other business for the committee tonight? Seeing none, I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Shoner,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye.